The JJ McCarthy era in Minnesota has arrived, and it's 1-0. Welcome to the Locked On Vikings podcast.
You are Locked On Vikings, your daily Minnesota Vikings podcast, part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.
What's up, everybody? Welcome to the Locked On Vikings podcast, where we're always trying to learn something new. It's part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day. And thank you so much for making Locked On Vikings your first listen of the day every single day. I appreciate my hashtag everydayers so very much. Today's episode is brought to you by FanDuel. Right now, new customers can bet just $5, and if your bet wins, you'll get $300 in bonus bets to use across the app. Today on the show, oh baby, some of you might still be awake. That win was so exciting. Vikings win 27-24 on the back of 3 fourth quarter JJ McCarthy touchdowns, 2 through the air, 1 with his legs. And the Vikings end up being up 27-17 with like 2.5 minutes to go, and you're starting to think about onside kick math. Somehow a game that started out horribly, and we'll talk about why that happened. I'll give you my theory today, and then I'll go look at the tape, and hopefully I'll have some time before we have to get into Falcons mode later in the week. I'll have some time to see if I can figure out exactly what was going wrong and what changed in the fourth quarter when JJ McCarthy really seemed to kind of get out of his funk, figure it out, and start to move the ball methodically down the field. 3 straight touchdown drives, and they were absolutely beautiful, but it did not start well. I am going to start this with a story. If you have followed me for a long time, you know that a couple years ago, I wrote I wrote a feature for Wide Left on JJ McCarthy and his path to the NFL. Something I like to do a lot for players. And in it, there's this moment that's sticking out to me tonight, which is in the college football playoff in his second season, 2023 season, against TCU. A lot of you might remember this game from JJ McCarthy. This might have been the first time a lot of you ever saw JJ McCarthy if you didn't watch Michigan all year that year. And he threw a really, really nasty pick six to TCU. In fact, he threw 2 really terrible pick sixes to TCU, and they would end up losing that game. But if you ask JJ McCarthy about that game, he'll tell you that the lesson that he took from that one was not necessarily about those pick sixes, but rather what happened after them. That Michigan clawed back and made that a game at the end, if you remember. And it taught him a lesson about how much a really bad pick six can blend into the background of a game. How one bad play never has to define your entire night. And boy, did we see that lesson show up in this one. I don't think we need to hold anybody to account for whatever they posted online, whatever they said to people around them, or whatever they were thinking when JJ McCarthy threw an absolutely horrific pick six to former Vikings cut Nahshon Wright to bring the Bears lead to 17-6 before or coming out of halftime in the third quarter. And it was 17-6 well into the fourth quarter, up to 12 minutes left in the fourth quarter. It felt so done. And I know you all felt it. There are very few people out there. I'm sure there are some that just keep faith to the last second, but I'm sure there are very few of you out there that felt like, yeah, we got this. But the lore of this game is already coming out. JJ McCarthy, or Justin Jefferson and Kevin O'Connell have already talked about a couple of the really fun moments about what they said to each other at halftime or whatever, and how the vibe was always that JJ McCarthy felt like he had this. He never felt like, oh, woe is us, we're going down. We as fans probably did, and I don't hold that against anybody at all, because it felt bad. The Vikings started this game 4 of 5 3-and-outs to start halftime. Their 6th possession, when they had gotten first downs once, it was a singular field goal drive, and it was most of the yardage was from a pass interference. Then at halftime, they get the ball back with 20 seconds, thanks to a timeout that I was kind of skeptical of, because I thought that they would just kneel it. They were on the 30-yard line. They had 20 seconds. It wasn't really enough time, and JJ McCarthy had been playing poorly. But they found it. They threw one deep to Jalen Nailor JJ McCarthy found it. Naylor barely doesn't get out of bounds. They have to use their final timeout and kick a 59-yarder, which is Will Reichard's career high. He nails it. The Vikings would win by 3. That is a very big one, and Will Reichard hitting all 3 of his kicks was huge. A couple of really big performances on special teams. We won't be able to get to every detail of this one, by the way, in a half an hour, but I do want to also shout out Miles Price on special teams, who had a really nice day as a returner. But that moment, you felt it kind of turn around. But then the pick six happened after that and just cuts all that momentum away. You go into halftime, it's 10-6. You feel like, look, it's only a 4-point game. We're in this. We got this, even though we've been outplayed for the entire first half. Why they got outplayed for the entire first half, I'm going to put a pin in. I'll get to that later. But for me, the headline of the game is that J.J. McCarthy settled in. That he found, and that's the thing everybody's talking about. How did he settle in, right? The difference between first quarter McCarthy and fourth quarter McCarthy was totally different. He just kind of had to get into the rhythm of the game. The ways in which McCarthy struggled early were kind of the ones that I expected, right? That pick six is a heat check that so many young quarterbacks throw in their first couple of starts. An exact thing, right? There's a speed out, there's a cornerback jumping it, and in college, you could always zip that thing in there. That corner was never fast enough to jump it, and in the NFL, suddenly that dude's better than you're used to. And you have to have the discipline not to throw that. You have to recalibrate exactly what open is to you, because in the NFL, it's different than what it is in college. But the real key is, after you do that, can you bounce back? Kevin O'Connell said it on the podium after the game. You know, a lot of teams would pack it in after that. That was an absolute haymaker from the Bears. A left hook right to the eye in a game you were already losing. A lot of teams would say, well, not our night. Okay, one of those nights. Everything that can go wrong will go wrong. We'll lick our wounds and we'll try to, forget it quickly on a short week, right? And I had my 3-segment structure for this show, like, ready to go. Like, I was so ready to be like, okay, here's what went wrong, offense, defense, and then I was going to kind of have a cope angle about how this is the growing pains of J.J. McCarthy and we should be patient and all that. And it turns out the patience we needed was just like for the rest of that quarter, because eventually J.J. McCarthy found it. After 2 more 3-and-outs, the Bears had a big, long drive where they just dunked it all the way down to reasonable field goal range. And then they took a holding penalty and then an incomplete pass and then a grounding call. All of this led to a 3rd and 30. And it was just enough for the Bears that they could just get a little bit of their yardage back so the field goal could be reasonable again. And then Cairo Santos missed the field goal. Horrible day for him in Chicago. From that moment on, J.J. McCarthy took it over. He cans into a zone run that Jordan Mason gets a decent gain on, and it just kind of keeps on rolling from there. He hits Justin Jefferson on an out with a blitzer coming into his face. And then a couple plays after that, he hits Justin Jefferson in the end zone in a very tight window. He just zips it in there. That's what he does the best. Zip one over the middle into a tight window. That is what he always did in Michigan. And it's a touchdown. A few plays later, after a 3-and-out from the Bears, the Bears punt it back. There was a great return, or I think this one was the blocked punt from Eric Wilson. Again, a lot of big heroes on special teams. Eric Wilson gets in and gets not a full block, but he gets enough of the punt where the punt's really bad. Ball's at the 50. And a few plays later, McCarthy hits Aaron Jones on a stutter and go to the running back. Beautiful throw for a touchdown, for a 30-yard touchdown. And suddenly the Vikings are in the lead. They hit the 2-point conversion after that to Adam Thielen, his only catch of the night. And it's suddenly 20-17 Vikings. And the Bears are falling apart. Caleb Williams is falling apart. And the exclamation point is the zone read rushing touchdown from J.J. McCarthy. It's 3rd and 1. The defensive end, I think it's Daya Odengbo, who had a great game, but he totally does not respect the J.J. McCarthy running threat. He plays it way too far inside, basically cheats it. So the way that you want to play that as a defensive end is you're trying to surf the backside tackle, or the backside blocker. So sometimes you put your hand on that guy and you kind of stay tight to him, and then keep your eyes on the exchange and then try to chase whoever has the ball. But against faster quarterbacks like Lamar Jackson. Actually, the broadcast made a really good point about this for Joey Bosa against Lamar Jackson on Sunday Night Football. Against a faster quarterback, you might want to cheat to the outside a little bit. Say, well, if that quarterback's going to keep, I want to give myself a head start because that guy's fast. Odengbo does not do that at all. And J.J. McCarthy runs right around him, and it's a foot race to the end zone, which he wins, and the Vikings are up 27-17 with like 2.5 minutes to go. The rest of the game is a little bit spicy, but mostly a formality. The Bears will score another touchdown, but it ultimately turns out meaningless because of, again, another great special teams moment from Ty Chandler, who catches the ball in the end zone and has the wherewithal to run it out, which you would usually never want to do because you take a kneel down, you get the ball at the 35. You usually would never want to do that. But by running it out, there was 2:02 left on the clock. You chew up that last two seconds and you take the 2-minute warning away from the Bears. Beautiful stuff. That leads to the Vikings win. So all of that stuff was excellent. But what was going wrong in the first place? That'll be next on Locked On Vikings. Today's episode of Locked On Vikings is brought to you by Supply House. When the opening whistle blows on a new repair, get your crew moving forward with Supply House. Order today and see parts on your doorstep tomorrow. Over 280,000 plumbing, HVAC, and electrical items from the most trusted brands in the business. Their real-time inventory and honest lead times keeps you from punting projects, while their industry-leading customer service always has your blind side covered. My wife and I are in the midst of a big housing project, so this is an extremely clutch thing to come up for me. I'm very excited to get involved with Supply House. They have next day delivery, and their Trademaster perks like priority shipping and dedicated support make the whole process smoother. Join the free Trademaster program today and score various perks like priority shipping, lower prices, and the dedicated support line. Visit supplyhouse.com to sign up for free and use promo code SHNFL5 for 5% off of your first order. That's supplyhouse.com. Real people, real service. This episode is also brought to you by Gametime, the best place to find last-minute tickets. The NFL season is back, and honestly, there's nothing better than being in the stadium surrounded by fans cheering on your team. But getting tickets can be a hassle between long queues, login screens, and prices suddenly jumping at checkout with a million hidden fees. It's super frustrating. That is where Gametime can help you. Not only do they have the entire at checkout full price up front so you can actually make the decision you think you're making, they can find some excellent deals. As prices usually will go down as you get closer to kickoff, it makes sense to go on Gametime if you're trying to get last minute to a game, or if you're trying to buy early, if you're trying to get your tickets, say you're trying to plan a trip to Dublin or London, you can get your tickets on Gametime there right now, or to any other Vikings game, home or away. Download the Gametime app, create an account, and use code LOCKEDONNFL for $20 off of your first purchase. Terms apply. Again, that's promo code LOCKEDONNFL for $20 off. Swipe, tap, ticket, go. Download Gametime today. Before we move on with the Locked On Vikings podcast, real quick shout out to the hate-watching Bears fans that have been with us for the better part of the last month, ever since the last time the Bears looked good, which was in against the Bills backups in a preseason game. I assume I won't be hearing from you anymore. I haven't heard from you yet, at least in any comments or in the question doc or anything. So it's been fun. Just wanted to say fond farewell. But moving on, so it's all hunky dory that the Vikings found a way to come back and get this win, right? But Jesus Christ, it was bad to start. Like, what happened? I have a theory. It's just a theory. Okay, shout out Matt Pat. About why the Vikings offense was so discombobulated to start and what changed that helped it get better. But it's just one theory, and I might even be overthinking it. It could just be that J.J. McCarthy settled in and started playing better, right? But part of that is the decisions that he's making. Did he can the play when he was supposed to, right? You call 2 plays in the huddle, and then you say can if you want to go to the backup play. Or this is the signal. You'll touch your fingers to your helmet. If you see that, that's the nonverbal signal for when it's loud. Usually in most teams, the way I know it, can is the way that, unless the Vikings have changed their terminology to throw everybody off, but that'd be pretty weird. Would not match what anybody else in the NFL does. But part of that is when you call 2 plays in the huddle, a real play and a backup play, you can get pretty long play calls. I'm going to pull up. So I have a playbook from a recent offense. It's not a current year version, but it's an NFL playbook and I'm just going to read you one of the play calls just so you can know how long those plays are. This is just a random play action rollout. And the play call you would hear in the huddle is Y Mo, south right, clamp F short, Randall pin, skate H sneak. That's a lot of words. And if you want to can out of that into like a real run, for example, let's say you see something in the front that says a real run is going to do better than a play action on this play. If the defense lines up a certain way, you would say Y Mo, south right, clamp F short, Randall pin, skate H sneak. See, I'm reading it and I'm even flipping it. Can to, and then you would say a whole other play call with maybe as many words. It's a lot of words. And so if you just think about the procedure, you got 40 seconds of a play clock, right? From whistle to whistle. First whistle comes up. Offense is trying to get set. Coaches have whatever they have to get the play call in. Vikings have to huddle up, recite that same play call. So that's two people that have to read all these words out loud. And then you have as much time as then you have to break the huddle, get to the line, and then if there's any motions involved in that, if there's any alerts, or if you do want to can, you need time to make that decision. You need a lot of play clock. The Vikings have always kind of needed a 50-second play clock. And if you remember, this was a problem last year with Sam Darnold as well, that the Vikings would get right up against the play clock. They had procedural issues. They would have, they'd be right up against it with delay of games or having to take timeouts, or motions would be rushed. The whole process would be rushed. It would be an issue. And the Vikings were up against the play clock for basically the entire first 3 quarters of this game. It was always down to the wire. The Manning cast was going crazy about it. Peyton Manning was driving Peyton Manning nuts that they kept breaking the huddle at 15 seconds instead of like 18, 20 seconds, which is really when it's optimal to do that. Because the play calls are so dang long. And by the way, you got a first-time quarterback in there who needs to memorize and recite all of these play calls. So you have to find a way to streamline that, right? But the punish to this is more than just that it potentially will result in a delay of game or a timeout. I think the Vikings maybe got 1 delay of game. I'm not going to look through my notes, but like that didn't have a huge impact. What has a huge impact is that the other team can time this out. I talked about this on the squad show. I'll repeat the point. So very famously, Aaron Rodgers in his heyday in Green Bay would have this problem. This is something that the Packers would have to struggle with a lot, actually. And the Vikings got a lot of sacks on this. Aaron Rodgers would spend a lot of time at the line of scrimmage, and he wanted to do stuff, right? You wanted to see emotion, see how it goes. He would start dialing stuff in. He's got all his hand signals right. He would start like calling hot routes. So he would be telling receivers what to do and basically drawing up his own plays in the sand. It was really cool, but it took forever. So sometimes that meant that he uses every single second of the play clock. And when it's time to snap the ball, 3, 2, 1, 0, the defense knows that they can go at 0. You can just pop right off that thing. You know it's not a fake, a hard count or a double snap count or anything like that. Your snap count basically doesn't matter. And you'll actually hear that when the play clock starts going down, you'll see 2 things for the quarterback. You'll either see him just start clapping. That is the forget everything, snap it now, we have to go. That cancels motions or anything else that's going if you're behind and you just need to do it. Or you'll hear turbo set hut, usually really fast. It's more like turbo set hut, and you don't know you're like, what did he just say? But that turbo tells the whole team we are no longer doing whatever the called snap count was in the huddle. If I said on 2 in the huddle and you hear turbo, go. On turbo, go. So turbo set hut. That's also a quick snap too. If I say in the huddle, we're going to go on turbo, we could maybe line up, do no motions, no nothing. Turbo set hut. We're just going to try to catch them off guard by quick snapping it. So you'll see those 2 things in the, like, kind of up against it in the play clock, right? To try to mitigate this effect where the defense kind of knows what's coming. But did you notice they couldn't really run the ball nearly as well in the first half as they did in the second half when they started getting to the line a little bit quicker? It didn't totally go away. There were a couple of plays where the Vikings needed to get that play off, including a 3rd and 1 on the final touchdown drive. that turned into a good enough handoff to Aaron Jones right up the middle, got across the line, but they almost didn't get that one off. So it was still happening, and that's still something that I'm concerned about. And there are a couple things from JJ McCarthy's game that I am still concerned about long-term, that we got to see that get better. And I think that's one of them. You just have to get in and out of the huddle a little bit better. A lot was made about the JJ McCarthy not playing in the preseason, and you might be saying, well, wouldn't the preseason have helped to get him kind of used to that? And while I think maybe he probably wouldn't have played more than a drive if you played him in another preseason game, maybe a quarter, but you're talking about like 20 reps here. This is something that could only really get figured out over the course of a real game. Not to mention, you're not in nearly as hostile an environment. The worst environment they went to was a sleepy Titans crowd, which is a preseason game. Like, how can you blame them? Or a couple of home crowds that are going to be nice and quiet and friendly to you. And beyond that, it's just different. It's different when you're on the road, when things count, things are going all full speed. It's all starters in front of you. You've got an actual game plan where in the preseason, you maybe will have some kind of truncated game plan, but you're not like looking at formations and trying to figure out tendencies for the preseason. So I would push back on that a little bit. I don't think more preseason would have helped with this. I think there's only one way to learn it. And by the way, McCarthy's not going to get it next week perfectly either. It's going to be a while before he gets this stuff. And this is the point that I was kind of going to make before the Vikings made the comeback, was these are kind of the exact growing pains that I expected. Stuff that is impossible to learn from a book, that you only can do it. You just have to get out there, do it, be a little bit too slow, and practice it and get better. And getting wins during that is amazing. Did not seem like that was going to happen for a while. But when things looked their darkest, things changed a little bit, I think. This is my guess. This is the part where I'm totally speculating, but it would kind of explain everything we saw tonight. I think the play calls got a little shorter. With the clock winding down, you're down 17-6. You got to get things going a little bit. You just had a missed field goal. You got a little bit of momentum, right? This is right about when Randy Moss joined the Manning cast. And after that missed Cairo Santos field goal, that's when the 3 touchdown drives started, right? And maybe your play calls get a little bit shorter, things get a little bit simpler, and JJ McCarthy can just go play. You don't need 30 words of a play call to make this kid go. And maybe that was too much to put on the young guy's plate right off the bat. Maybe a simpler offense was a good idea. Kevin O'Connell is uncompromising. He doesn't like to do this. He's very, very unwilling to simplify things, put the training wheels on, even for Josh Dobbs or Jaron Hall. But maybe that would have been a good idea to make the offense work a little bit better. And what a great way to learn that lesson, by being forced into doing something simpler, because now you kind of want to move fast. I mean, you're not like in hurry up or anything like that, but you want to move with a sense of urgency when it's 17-6 and you're starting to eat away at the fourth quarter. And then it starts to work and you get a little bit of momentum going and things start to sort of snowball on the Bears. Suddenly you look up and it's 27-17 and it all worked out. Maybe that helps. You get a simpler play call, you break the huddle, you give JJ McCarthy a little more time at the line. He's not just hurrying to get the snap count off. He can really settle in and do things right. Not to mention the defense doesn't get to time the snap count on you because they know the play clock's at 0. Maybe that kind of thing helped. I don't know. Total guess, but I wouldn't be surprised. There are a couple of other things that, shout outs that I want to give out. Some stuff that happened on the defense, plus some injury updates. That'll be next on Locked On Vikings. Today's episode of Locked On Vikings is brought to you by FanDuel. Boy, the season has arrived. We all know it's football season now. And right now, new customers can bet just $5. And if your bet wins, you get $300 in bonus bets to use across the app. Hey, did you maybe talk a whole bunch of smack to Bears fans before this game? Are you feeling kind of dissatisfied because they all aren't showing up to take their lashing after losing? Next time, maybe just put a little money where your mouth is, because FanDuel will always pay out when you win. It's quick, easy, and it's the best way to add a little bit of energy to, say, an early Sunday window if your team plays in primetime, which is going to be the case again next week. If you're ready to play, download the FanDuel app now by visiting FanDuel.com to get started. That's FanDuel.com to place your first $5 bet. tying up some loose ends here on the Locked On Vikings podcast. We'll leave the JJ McCarthy thing there for now. I will do a whole Patreon video and a bunch of stuff about him later, but we definitely need to discuss the defense because they got off to a really poor start, right? Big, long touchdown drive. I'm not holding too much against them. That was a really nice, well-oiled opening scripted drive from the Bears, and I don't really think that I hold it against the defense. They kind of forced the Bears to like execute 10 plays really well in a row, but they were all short. It was all checkdowns or scramble drills. It was all very conservative, but very West Coast well-oiled, and that's really difficult to keep up. And so I think you just kind of give them that. You just say, okay, if you can do that 10 to 12 times in a row, you can score. And how often how much are you going to be able to do that all game long becomes the question. And we got the answer to that question, which is that they eventually will run out of patience, start pushing the ball a little bit more, and that's where the mistakes come in, right? I would be remiss just as somebody that I have so many Caleb opinions that are independent of Vikings fandom, that kind of stem back from like when it was the draft, right? And we were all deciding, is this guy QB1? But this is one of the least accurate games I think I've ever seen from Caleb Williams. He had a minus 13% completion percentage over expectation. That's an accuracy metric from Next Gen Stats. Shout out Seth Walder. And that kind of tracks for me. Like he sailed a lot of these like makeable throws. So I think the defense had a bit of a gilded day. That doesn't take away that they only gave up 17 offensive points, right? Final score was 27-24 with a pick six in there. So only 17 offensive points. And one of those two touchdowns came in what was functionally garbage time. And the other one came in the opening drive. Between those two, one field goal drive, that was it. They got a lot of stops. So like production wise, extraordinarily happy with the Vikings defense, and a lot of the pressure that they got on Caleb Williams really made it so that Ben Johnson couldn't design an offense today. He couldn't like go up on the whiteboard and like find concepts that work and, attack safeties and all that. No, your offense when you are the Bears is Caleb Williams does stuff. And if you can just figure out how to get Caleb Williams to do stuff, you can do it. But a normal offense won't happen. And I genuinely think that the Caleb Williams we saw tonight, as cool as the scrambling was and as lethal as it was also kind of neuters what some of the stuff that makes Ben Johnson good. I didn't talk about it a lot because it's not really my place. It's because it's a Bears thing. But that Ty Dunn big long epic, there's a 3-part thing at Go Long TD about the Bears and the sort of dysfunction inside Chicago. A lot of it had to do with people who with stuff that happened last year. I'm not going to go super into it, but one of the things that I kept thinking about from it during this game was this sort of sense in the building that Ben Johnson ain't going to put up with this, that he has no attachment to Caleb Williams. And, he's not the guy that drafted him first overall. He's not the guy that, bent over backwards to get Caleb Williams to agree to play there and all of this other stuff that we'll call it rumored because it's all, anonymous source and stuff. But, Ben Johnson doesn't have, this is someone else's quarterback. And I could see a future where the Bears have to pick between Williams and Ben Johnson, and they say, hey, let's get you a normal quarterback, Ben, and it works out way better for the Bears. I actually kind of wouldn't like to see them do that because I think it would make them better. As it stands right now, though, it was either scramble drill, make like 2 or 3 really cool plays, and then sail a million of them over his head. I think the pressure got to Caleb Williams, which I guess sort of undermines my point about it being like a gilded win, like a gilded game a little bit, where like, look, there were guys open a lot on non-blitz plays, like a lot. Like if you drop 7, you shouldn't have that big of a hole in your zone. But Williams missed a lot of those throws, and that happened because of pressure in the interior. One of the theses of this game and of the Viking season as a whole is that the only change the defense made, the only substantive change that they made on the roster was on the interior, right? They're running back the edges. They're running back the safety room, except switch it Cam Bynum for a Theo Jackson. They switched out some old washed corners for some other rejects at corner, right? But on the interior, they got Javon Hargrave, they got Jonathan Allen, and I'm going to put Jalen Redmond in this category, who very much was a starter in this game and played like one, and maybe was one of, like, he went like blow for blow with Allen and Hargrave. He looked awesome in this game. And they got pressure from the interior, which helped those chase down drills turn into full-on scramble panic nightmares. That was awesome. I do wish they had been able to contain Caleb in the pocket a little better. I think it just didn't matter to Flores. I think he just said, you know what? He's going to run for his yards. He gets like 58 yards rushing, and we're just going to win the game. You'll get your 58 and a touchdown, and we're going to win the game outside of that. You're going to need to do more than 58 and a touchdown to beat us, but we'll let you get that. And in exchange, we get a much easier time getting pressure because we're not worrying about stopping up and containing. I think that was basically the philosophy that the D-line took with Marcus Dixon and Brian Flores, and by and large, they got what they paid for there. I kind of wish they would have contained him a little more, but if a whole bunch of pressure is what you get for letting Caleb Williams out of the pocket a few times, or letting him get, a first down on the ground by just like juking Jonathan Allen and getting up the B gap, like, you know what? Okay, I'll give you I guess that we'll take that, right? But I do think that there were more issues in the secondary. At the same time, though, there were a lot of long pockets, a lot of Caleb Williams not finding what he wanted to see downfield and checking it down. So I probably shouldn't be too harsh on that either. It's definitely going to be one where I need to look at the all 22 and see exactly what everybody is doing. But there were some individual performances that cannot be denied, right? I already mentioned Jalen Redmond. Andrew Van Ginkel almost had a gink 6 there on a screen on a 3rd and 19. Cannot believe you would throw a screen to his side on 3rd and 19. That is just something you have to know that you can't do against the Vikings. Any team employees that are listening to local team podcasts of an upcoming opponent, which is a thing, by the way, this is my gift to you, okay? Don't throw a screen to Andrew Van Ginkel's side on 3rd and long. Don't do that. Look up what happens when you do that. Go to your cut-ups and look at what happens when you do that. Because he almost walked in for the exclamation point touchdown as things were unraveling for the Bears. But that was an awesome one. Jonathan Grenard, relatively quiet day. I think Javon Hargrave was the only one to get a sack because Caleb Williams is just super slippery. I should also mention here at the kind of tail end of the show, there were a couple of injuries you should know about. Ryan Kelly was mentioned on the broadcast to be in the medical tent. He came out shortly thereafter. Everybody has essentially assured us that he's fine. That was nothing. Blake Cashman, on the other hand, was deactivated with a hamstring injury that he suffered while chasing Caleb Williams. That I'm pretty worried about. Hamstrings do tend to linger. But one of the shout-out performances was Eric Wilson, who came in and made a couple plays from scrimmage and had that punt block from special teams. Super excited to have him back and to see him making plays that filled my hearts with so much joy to see him do that. The other injury happened. You may have even missed it if you turned the game off after the final play, like I did to go do my YouTube short and the squad show. Somebody had to tell us in the chat. We had to go back and look at it, but Jeff Okudah suffered a concussion on that last play. Probably. They said on the podium that he's being evaluated for a concussion. The early signs are good, but it looked pretty nasty. He was down for a long time, and Courtney Cronin reported that he was actually carted to the locker room. He took a friendly fire shot to defenders. That I didn't see who was the other half of this equation, but two Vikings clashed into each other while trying to tackle Rome Odunze on the final lateral nonsense play with 5 seconds left in the game. So that's a situation to monitor as well. I think otherwise there are no other injuries that we know about. So we can move on to the team can move right on to Sunday. They'll have their film on Monday morning, probably around now as you're listening to this. And by the time you hear me with the next show, the Vikings will have moved on. Locked On Vikings will take a little more time to break this down. I want to go through the film meticulously on Caleb Williams. I want to go through the defense. I want to go through a lot. It's a short week, so I don't have a ton of time to do it. I'm going to get through what I can, but this is going to be what patreon.com/LukeBraunNFL is for, because I will probably publish some later in the week that are breakdowns of this game well after we've moved on to the Falcons on this show. So go check out patreon.com/LukeBraunNFL. Come back here, of course, for daily Vikings podcasts. Thank you so much for listening. Thank you so much to, I'm sure there's a whole bunch of first timers here. If you made it all the way to the end of the show, thank you so much. Subscribe to the show on whatever you listen to podcasts or on YouTube or whatever. Click that button. Come on down every single day. I will see you all tomorrow. And as always, Skull.